Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
I forgot to mention at the beginning, if there were any, I know for a fact there were some first-timers, people returning from a long absence. So it's our tradition to just go around the room and introduce ourselves. But if you're new, if you've been gone for a while, please let us know that too. And I'm subbing for Oswaldo, who's out of town, and Jana fell ill, and so Hector is here as a substitute teacher today, in case you were wondering why she looks so different. So we'll go around the room. My name is Grisha.
I'm Henry.
I'm Douglas.
Ken, I'm a student with Jonas and a fellow Sangha member with Hector, and there's someone else here too.
I'm Bruein. I'm Jack.
My name's Kath.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Terry, visiting from Houston, Texas.
I'm David.
I'm Clint.
My name is Jerry.
Jim.
Michael.
Rob.
I'm Richard.
I'm Joe.
James.
I'm John.
My name is Hal.
Peter. My name is Michael. I'm from San Jose.
I'm Tim. My name is David.
I'm Greg. I'm Andrew. I've been here once.
I'm Gary.
I'm Michael.
I'm Prasada Chitta.
Lisa. I've been here before once.
I'm David. Silas.
My name is Robert.
Okay.
Everyone.
Fabulous. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Hector. I was going to say my name is Jana, and that transgender thing is really working out. Along with the age reduction and race change, even. Who knew? So thank you for having me today, and for sitting for about 40 minutes listening to my jabber up here. But I believe I may have something to share laced along with what Jana hoped to bring to this Sangha today. Unfortunately, she's been very ill for the last month or so, going through a lot of rehabilitation with her back, and currently going through some kind of virus, it sounds like. And so may we extend some metta to her throughout the talk. And that's exactly what the talk will be centered around, actually, metta. And I wanted to be able to explain to you guys a little bit of the origins of metta. Because I think sometimes we get lost in traditions, and I do this and I dress like that, and metta is actually one of the most indigenous things of Buddhism that I think exists. It actually transcends Buddhism into Hinduism. It really comes from the Hindu roots of Buddhism, or at least what was before Buddhism, Jainism, and all that started getting going in India and Nepal. So I'm going to hand out, first off, so that you guys actually have something to follow with. And I apologize that there may not be enough copies, but please share. And you are feel free to take any of this. If you would not like to have a copy, you could always leave it somewhere at the table where someone else can take it. And if it's so good that everybody wants it and we run out, you can leave me your email, and I can certainly send you all of this stuff that we'll be talking about by email. So I'll give it a minute there for this piece to make it around, and that way what I'm about to say actually makes some degree of sense. And once again, please share it with your neighbor if there are not enough to go around. So I'll get started with where metta really stems from, this concept of metta. There's much larger practice, which is the Brahma Viharas, also known as the Divine Abidings. Any people here familiar with those? Oh, all right. Very good. And yeah, so you'll see that one of the first ones there is metta, which is loving kindness. The second being karuna, compassion, mudita, gladness or sympathetic joy, and upekkha, equanimity. So I won't go too much into karuna, mudita, upekkha today. Outside of that, I will let you guys know that should you choose to focus on any of those practices or meditations as well, they're not too different from one another. Actually, the science of developing each one of these 4 meditations or abidings is practically the same, with perhaps just a little tweaking here and there. But starting with metta, loving kindness. So this is really huge in Buddhist circles. We hear it more often than not. I'm not on Facebook, never been, but I hear there's a lot of loving kindness postings on Facebook. It can get really interesting. But I'll read a little bit, and I'm going to share quite a bit of Mel Weitzman, who is in our lineage, or part of the lineage. See, I am a student of John Adraka, who is a student of Blanche Hartman, who is a student of Mel Weitzman. And so I have some really insightful things that he's actually shared. There's this wonderful combination of talks that have made it in a much larger collection of something called Windbell. It's a periodical sort of thing that Zen Center has done for quite a bit. And perhaps I should stop there really quick and fully really introduce myself. My name again is Hector, a member of the Zenke Sangha, and a student in the Soto Zen tradition of Buddhism. Yesterday we actually got, with my sister over here, Misaki, got to sit through a great teacher from a related tradition, Rinzai, and we got whacked with sticks and all kinds of stuff, and good times. But a really great teaching that I think we took from that is that really, at the end, these divisions and these traditions and what we may see as whatever really boil down to the same teachings, and that's always really amazing to experience. And I say experience because I think the Dharma is something that you can experience, you cannot capture it. And as soon as you experience it, it's gone. So Mel Weitzman says, because Zen puts so much emphasis in prajna, or wisdom, seeing the truth from the cold eye of wisdom, we tend to neglect the warm eye of compassion, without which our practice becomes unbalanced. And that is, I think, the essence of why these practices, these meditations are so important to all of us. That the truth is very important, and it's there regardless of what our delusions may be. And the truth at times can be very cold. So what accompanies the cold then would be the warmth in the practice. And that warmth is also very important. Perhaps something that we all need. We've always needed, and we never stop needing, and we terribly need in this day and age as well. So metta, loving kindness. Any other ideas or practices or perhaps applications that people here have towards metta that you would like to share with the Sangha? If not, I'll continue right on. All right. So one thing that Jenna did send out my way to be able to share with everybody it's kind of a show and tell day in a sense. But I think these are great pieces that I think she had a lot of intention to have here with the Sangha. So what you'll see passing around is actually a crying Buddha. I will also go ahead and hand out these pieces here that will go along with that. And a lot of the stuff, again, this is why I made the preface in the beginning that we'll have quite a bit to go through, but we're not going to read through much of it, if any of it at all, here and there. About a week ago, I was driving with Jana, and she shared with me that she had been speaking to a student that actually had a little amulet around his wrist with the Weeping Buddha. And what sparked the conversation is how phallic this image can actually be or become. But the images that we have here today are not intended to give rise to those phallic images of it, but more so the actual intent of what this image is going for. And this image is actually not a very widely spread image of the Buddha or a Buddha. And that's perhaps because its actual origin is from Indonesia, and it doesn't seem to spread too far beyond Indonesia. You may see it here and there. So there's a really great little explanation to what's up with this crying Buddha. And I'll read a little bit off of it, which says that a yogi man is said to be from the old country of Java. While he was still a young man, the warrior Buddha left his young son to go and fight wars for over the oceans. When he returned to the Indonesian islands many years later, in a ferocious battle, he came across an adversary wearing a mask. In this particular battle, and in many following battles, these two warriors fought, neither being able to slay the other. Then, in one great battle, the warrior Buddha defeated the masked warrior, and when he removed the mask, he recognized the face of his son. Upon this realization, he started weeping and renounced violence, hatred, and all other principles that he had stood for, and started to travel around, helping the young, the sick, the aged, and anyone else whom perhaps needed his help. Thus, he was now called the Weeping Buddha. And so with this Weeping Buddha, there is, let's start with, for those who have actually gotten a chance to see it, any reactions that you have from this Weeping Buddha? What is it? What does this image actually teach us?
It's kind of intense. It's just the person probably crying as much as he's angry.
Thank you. Any other observations of the crying Buddha?
I've never seen anything where the Buddha's showing much emotion except equanimity or calm or radiating maybe a little joy, but this is more intense.
This is one of those total displays of total grief that I've seen in art. It just seems to be totally abandoning himself to the grief without any efforts to hold it back.
Thank you. Okay.
I couldn't hear what Misaki said, but for me it's, I guess often in our practice we're sort of encouraged to
feel sort of only positive emotions, and it's easy to forget or overlook the fact that we're merely human, and we're going to suffer sadness and grief too. And so it's we also tend to forget that Buddha was a human too, and so it's just interesting to me to see that end of the emotional spectrum kind of represented here as being acceptable, okay, natural.
Thank you.
In the past 2 weeks, I've gone through a series of emotions and recognized it. I'm almost here. That my impression is that he's not necessarily weeping or grieving because of himself, but recognition that there is suffering in the world among all humanity, and that would be enough to bring grief on. And I realized in the past 2 weeks that there are a lot of people really suffering, and maybe in delusion or some other problems, but there really is suffering, especially in our first world civilization. We don't experience it as much physically, but there's plenty of suffering spiritually. Anyway, that's what I see in that image.
The story seems to indicate that this Buddha, has come to a moment where he recognizes his own delusion, and the delusion of seeing someone as other, which is crushing, I think, especially if it's done. But trying to deal with that sudden awareness of delusion is overpowering, I think, in many cases.
Thank you.
The sculpture seems to suggest to me that in suffering and pain, it can turn inward, but there's power in that. There's power that comes from that turning inward, and that in coming out of that, we have to find some degree of loving kindness for ourselves, and then be able to take that out into the world, come out of that tight bond that we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Any other reflections from the image? Please.
I was thinking and looking at it, and really much along the lines of what you just said. It's as if all of his parts are just sort of being pulled to a center point. He's sort of imploding. And what I gather from that is that it's sort of as if, and from your story, in conjunction with the image, he's got this traveling, he's going out, and he's harming, and there's just this recognition of I think that as an activity towards other beings, and then a kind of pulling all of that in, because a realization that previous going out was harming, and now it's all just being pulled towards each other. And I like that idea that somewhere in there's got to be some loving, before it can go back out, before that energy can go back out, it's got to find some loving kindness. Otherwise, it's sort of, I just imagine, I know that when I've hurt somebody that, especially when I did it in a way I didn't really realize what I was doing, and there's the shame around it, there is a kind of pulling in, you just you just pull everything in because you realize that your going out has been harming in some way or other that maybe you didn't realize. And it's just pull it in. And that's what I see there.
Thank you. Thank you. You're also wise. Very wise. You hit every point, really, that I think that this image was intended to bring up. And for those of you that touched on the pulling in, as you were saying, kind of that gravitation, what's interesting is that if you see what he's at, where his hands, the mudra, is actually at, is right on the third eye. And so, yes, there's a huge amount of gravitation that's happening within this position of the Buddha here, and which really gets us into the loving kindness. And I thank you for getting us streamed right into the loving kindness conversation here, because loving kindness is just like everything, I think, in Buddhism, easier said than done, right? And it's all about the practice. And the reason that I say it's all about the practice is because it's not just sitting. Meditation, we learned yesterday, is not just sitting. It's everything. It's every activity that you engage into can actually be a gateway into meditation, some form of meditation. And so metta, loving kindness, actually has a nemesis, really, an arch enemy, if you want to call it that, right? Which would be hatred or ill will. But those are really easy dichotomies to dissect and say, okay, well, it's almost this concept of good and evil. But there's something beyond that. And there's actually a nexus. And that's where we actually really have to be skillful, and where some of our real practice may actually jump in. And what this connection or nexus is actually called in the Brahmaviharas the near enemy. So it's not just either or. The near enemy is selfish love that may arise that looks a lot like metta. I'll do you a favor. I'll do this. I'll do that. But there may be a little bit of something rattling in there of, what am I going to get in return? This also plays a part, this near enemy, in terms of falling in love with somebody, or perhaps being attracted to a nice-looking fellow. There's certainly a part of perhaps, things that you express as love, or things that you're admiring for a given point in time, and then as they change, they may become faults that you start actually seeing. And so these things that you were loving, selfishly loving, I should say, then are the things that just irk you about that one individual. And so the practice there is being able to then enter these kinds of relationships and, what it is that you're doing, really savoring, I think, before diving in, right? And I think that's something that loving kindness is there to teach. But it's difficult, right? It's difficult because the near enemy, again, looks so much like loving kindness that at times it's a little difficult to not step into that near enemy. Personally, being asked to actually step in today and do the talk gave me a lot of those conflicting emotions before accepting to be able to do it. The real question that I ask is, why am I doing this? Why will I step in and do it? And is there any self-serving portion of it, why to do it? So I thought to myself, perhaps I should ask my Sangha members to bring tomatoes and throw them at me if I get a little out of line. and that'll show me. But no, it was just because I knew that it was something that needed to be done. It just needed to be done. It just is. And yes, it's an expression of loving kindness, not just to my teacher, who is not with her health and physically able to be here, but a loving kindness for the Sangha, that there is a teaching that was intended for today, and that I am here to be a vessel to attempt to deliver. And that is in itself there a way of practice of being able to identify, sit through the near enemy. Obviously there's no ill will or anything like that, but something that could arise. You know, what's to say my Sangha brothers and sisters don't feel terribly jealous that I'm up here. And that will go into, you know, some of these other practices here, but, you know, things to really consider. And, you know, and I'm not here to try and convince you that this is, you know, the way the practice rolls out, but to offer perhaps a way to look at it and something to perhaps try out and see how it works out for you, if it hasn't already. Again, you'll go into these other pieces of the Brahma Haras. So I'll pause a little bit on the loving kindness and all of this stuff. You know, we talked about the cold eye of truth. And while there is love, Suzuki Roshi from Zen Center, you know, once said, when a good thing happens, a bad thing happens simultaneously. When a bad thing happens, a good thing happens simultaneously. And there's this awesome dance going on between all of that. And so within that awesome dance, we recognize the first noble truth, which is that there is suffering, or that there is uncomfort. Or in the Scottish Four Noble Truths, it's always something. And because there is always something, a good amount of us, human people, beings, have a tendency to want to deal with that suffering. And what we're passing around here is a graphic of the harm caused by drugs. And I want to start this little segue here, not by saying that we're going to focus only on drugs, because there are many ways to numb the suffering or to not try to, deal with all of that, right? Any other ways that the Sangha here can think of that we deal with suffering outside of drugs? You could pull this up for a second, and we'll get a chance to dive right into it. But are there other ways to deal with suffering that doesn't require drugs? Can you think of other things that people do to turn a blind eye to suffering?
Gambling.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's loads of things we do. There's food, there's sex, there's shopping, there's keeping busy all the time, there's sleeping. There's a lot of ways in which we move away from the pain of suffering.
Fabulous, thank you. Someone else has...
I said gambling.
Gambling, there you go, gambling. Yeah.
Just total self-absorption. You don't have to be doing any of these things, but just so absorbed in your own life that you don't look outside and see other people and their critics and everything.
Just from living, just being living and being hungry and sleeping, and at the end of the day you get old and you die.
I love when Jana says, you're born, you go through all this uncomfortable, unpleasing stuff, and then you die. So comforting. All right. Well, let's go ahead then and, be a little bit more subject-oriented or title-oriented. Because each one of those is a very unique distraction of its own, and you can really break it apart. But perhaps the one to look at today will be the use of drugs. And what some of you are looking at here or are sharing with your neighbor is a graphic based off of the principles of harm reduction in terms of drugs. And you'll see that, there's a distinction, if you see on the key, between harm to others and harm to the user. Nonetheless, there's harm to both the user and the others, right? And that you'll see in this really unique graph. And there's a lot of debate even with the people who created this graph. So if there's debate here, it's all welcome. Any shocking reactions from looking at the graph in terms of what drugs are deemed to be more harmful than others?
Alcohol one's off the chart.
Alcohol being off the chart, number one up there.
Well, I just want to say, I've had some experience with both LSD and mushrooms that have been ecstatic and life-changing. So I know that they can be abused, but sometimes they're a real portal to a higher consciousness. I just want to throw that out there.
Fabulous, very good.
Yeah, it's interesting with methamphetamine. It shows very little harm to others. I mean, I haven't dealt with anybody who's been on meth or done meth, but almost all of the harm it says here is for the users. It's just interesting to me. I would think it's such a strong addiction that it would really screw up your relationships. Right? Do you know how they came up with this? I mean, was this just they just put it down, or they did some scientific research? Or
yeah, I think it's based off of some degree of research. Unfortunately, harm reduction, I think, falls into a very progressive style of dealing with addictions and so on and so forth. Terribly underfunded, may I add. That I think this is one go at a huge subject, right? And by no means, again, is this, golden truth in a piece of paper. Perhaps something to be talked about a little bit more, researched a lot more. But for what it's worth, I think it offers a little bit of insight just in terms of how some of the research, some of these conversations with drug users and people that work around them and so on and so forth have been able to kind of slightly quantify the harm between the two. But I agree with you. I think the methamphetamine one may actually be a little bit different than what we're looking at here from personal experience, where there's a huge amount of harm to the people surrounding.
Yeah, it reminds me also of what you sometimes talk about is the opposite of this. A perfect act is an act that lessens suffering for yourself and the suffering of others. And I never thought maybe you could make a list of types of acts that, so I'm saying the opposite.
Go ahead. Oh, no, there wasn't. Okay.
Well, looking at the list, it reminds me that our human race has arrived at a point where we have perfected so many ways of providing distraction. This is like the ultimate technological achievement. I mean, you can just get lost totally and hardly ever have a way of coming back to reality by following some of these paths. And so many people do. I don't know where that leads to, but it's very challenging. Maybe it was always this challenging, but today it feels the distractions are handed to you no matter what your income level on a platter, you know. The alternatives don't seem as readily available to people in general.
Absolutely. Did anyone think that any of these actually would have fallen somewhere different?
Yeah, I think any of the ones that we use regularly, we think will fall all the way to the bottom.
Thank you. Absolutely.
So, one of the things I thought about Matt from a standpoint was in suffering. I think so many times, having grown up in a very conservative Christian household, one of the ways we, in my home and in our church, it seemed, was taking care of others was a way to avoid our own suffering. You know, point outward, look at others, distract people by whatever's going on. And meth is one of those drugs that's an isolation drug. The first thing you do is shut the door on everybody else in the world around you. And that's how you deal with the others. You block them out. You shut that, and all that's left is yourself in that process. And that continues for a very long time after you've managed to shut the door hard on that other, world around you and all the people. You're left with your own dealings from there on, right? Because there's just nobody else left. And that continues for that longer time.
Feeling of isolation is a scary thing.
It is, isn't it? I think it's a good time for a Rumi poem. The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a menace. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Amazing stuff, Rumi, huh? Mm-hmm. So I won't pretend to sit up here and have much answers, to these world problems. And again, I think the things that we can tap into are these ancient human technologies that have given it at least a shot to see how do we start dealing with some of this stuff. So I want to invite you to develop along with me a metta meditation right here and now. And we do this quite often with our Sangha. And so I want to invite all of you to get as comfortable as you can get. Whatever your comfort may be. And for this meditation, I'd like you to also close your eyes. It's okay to have your eyes closed for this meditation. Short meditation, may I add. And I want all of us here together to take one breath, deep breath. Let it fill your belly. exhale. This is your last breath. Take another one. This one's a gift. Take another one. And yet another gift. Keep receiving this gift. Keep breathing. Feel yourself alive. Please keep breathing. Now work along with me with your eyes closed and continuing on your breathing to extend metta. Extend feelings of love or goodwill towards yourself and allow yourself to just settle in it. And when you've settled that feeling, you can now extend that to a friend, someone that you know and like. That's pretty easy, isn't it? Maybe easier than extending it to yourself. Then, when you can do that, you can extend it to someone you're indifferent to, someone you don't have any particular feeling about. Perhaps your friend's friend or friends whom you may not be too familiar with. But please extend metta to them. Then, when you can do that, try to extend metta to someone that you don't like. Maybe someone you really can't stand. Focus carefully and send loving kindness. Please send loving kindness towards Jana so that she may heal. Please send loving kindness to your family, loved ones, anyone who you may deeply love, someone who you're truly intimate with. Send the loving kindness to everybody in this room. To the Mission District. To San Francisco. To California. To the US, including Donald Trump. To the hemisphere, to the entire planet. If you can slowly open your eyes, this is it. This is Metta. Thank you.
Okay, it is that time again. Can we hear from our host? James, our host?
I'm the host, so let's see, I'll be going around with the Dana Bowl during social time for donations. There are snacks, and there's hot water for tea, and there's a dishwasher, so when you're done with your teacup, you can put it in the dishwasher, you don't have to wash it. If you're not on our mailing list, you can sign up in the corner closest to the meditation hall on the right. And some people meet at 12:30 for lunch at the front door sometimes. I haven't seen them doing it lately, but it's beneficial.
Okay. Next week is an open discussion meeting, so any other announcements? Yep.
Yes, this coming Thursday on Thanksgiving Day, there will be another GBF annual Thanksgiving Day potluck at my place in the East Bay. So if you're interested in attending, please pick up a flyer and let me know you're coming. It's not too late to sign up, and you're welcome to bring guests. The event starts at 5 o'clock Thursday. Thank you.
I just want to honor Kay for doing this every year. And all of us have our family in the immediate area. Kay really provides a refuge for us to enjoy Thanksgiving together. So thank you, Kay.
How many years have you been doing it, Kay?
Oh gosh, 6-7 years, something like that.
I know we don't know about Jonna's health and when she'll be well. Do you know if there is a plan to try to get her, when she's well enough to come?
Charity. You know if there's a plan to have.
Well, I originally started talking with her about helping her restart her web page, and so much has engulfed her that she couldn't focus on that, but it has been in the back of my mind that we are in a position at some point where we could extend her some financial aid. I was hoping to discuss it with her today. So,
and we'll be able to bring her back maybe in the, spring?
Spring, yeah. But there's nothing firm or structured yet. But keep that in your minds, that it's a possibility.
Hal's been doing the speakers for the past 2 years, so he's the one, if you have a person you want to recommend.
Yeah, complaints, please come to me.
All the above, but only with a man.
Okay. Well, if there are no other announcements, then we will close with our dedication to merit. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.